Hello and welcome to Lesson 4 of Kickstart Personal Finance. Today we are going to be talking about emergency fund and comfortable retirement. So first off, what is an emergency fund? So basically an emergency fund is a stash of money that you set aside in case of a financial emergency. So basically just extra money you have in a savings account in order to prevent financial crisis, so that way when things do happen, you have extra money saved. And why is it important to have an emergency fund? So emergency funds are super important because financial issues and crises happen all the time. For example, businesses and companies close all the time, and because of that, people lose jobs, and that can be a huge financial blow. So if you have no emergency fund, you follow the arrow up to the top, there's no financial support, yet you're still going to have bills to pay and expenses to cover. So like, let's say you have a family, you have to pay for your kids to eat, you have to pay for bills, so you pay for bills to go to school. Public school still costs money in bills. You have to pay for electricity, mortgage, water. All these things still cost money, but if you don't have a job, you have no way to pay for it. And with no financial backing, people are forced to pull out loans, which create an even longer period of financial stress. So that can be just problematic for the future. So that's why you want to have an emergency fund. So if you follow the bottom arrow, if you have an emergency fund, it gives you time to recover and find a new job or a new career, and you can still pay off whatever expenses you still have. So if you have that emergency fund, you can still pay for those things that I was talking about, like water, electricity, mortgage, bills, all those types of bills. And then obviously once you're reemployed, you no longer rely on that emergency fund. But if you had that, because you had that emergency fund, you never had to pull out loans, and you don't have debts to pay off in the future. So basically the lesson learned here is having an emergency fund supports financial freedom, lowered financial stress. It just creates opportunities to make financial risks in the future, like making investments, like we have talked about before. And then this segues into comfortable retirement, because if you have lower financial stress and more financial freedom, your retirement's going to be more comfortable and you're going to have more freedom in your retirement. So basically the goals of retirement are having enough money saved in order to continue a certain lifestyle and quality of life, even though you don't have that income from having a job. So and also being able to support your children financially if they fall upon financial hardship. So people, grandparents all the time have to support their children even though they're adults, because they run out of money or they lose their jobs. And so if you aren't comfortably retired, you may not have that opportunity to support your children. And also the overarching goal is to live stress-free and enjoy a time where work, parenting, and financial stress are no longer a part of your life. But obviously those financial stress issues are going to still be a factor if you don't have a comfortable retirement. So the ways of achieving a comfortable retirement are years of planning, saving, and investing money into a fund that will support you throughout retirement. Because the thing is, many people just assume that programs like Social Security and Medicare, which are social programs that the government provides for you, will support you throughout retirement. But unfortunately, more funding is needed than just those social programs. And sadly, our government is in so much debt, in the future those programs may not even exist. Also, many companies help manage retirement planning with certain specific accounts and types of investments that are secure and safe. So that's what we're going to get into. So the one that, I don't know, maybe you have heard of it. It's called a 401k. So most companies offer 401k plans, where they take a certain portion of your paycheck and put it into a separate account, which is not accessible until retirement. So it comes as a monthly check, which is known as a pension, once you are retired. And it is recommended that on top of these 401k plans, you still have another 10 to 15% of your paycheck in a separate bank account dedicated entirely to retirement. So you don't use that for anything until you're retired, and then that comes on top of your 401k plan. And these two things will ensure a comfortable and easy transition into retirement, and you won't feel financially strained or stressed going into retirement. But there are challenges that come with saving. So like we talked about before, when you have that emergency fund, the reason you have that is because financial crises happen all the time, and you can't plan for them. You never know when they're going to happen. So obviously, in a perfect world, nobody would have these financial issues. But that's not the case. People do lose jobs. They have financial emergencies. And so when you're trying to support a family, it can often be hard to continue to save that additional 10 to 15% of your paycheck that we were talking about before. And it's when you're in that situation, it seems easy just to regain that 10 to 15% of your paycheck. But then when you go into retirement, you're gonna wish you had saved that 10 to 15%, not spent it. So some people are like dipping into their retirement fund. That's what we call it, is dipping into their retirement fund when they use their retirement fund even though they're not retired yet. And then all of these things add up to not having a comfortable retirement and financial troubles throughout retirement. So if you look on the right, what is the main reason you tapped into your retirement savings early? So you can see some people to pay for college, some people to buy a home, but most of these, huge is to pay off debt or bills, pay for financial emergency, job loss, and to pay for medical expenses and healthcare. So these things are super big. Those three things account for like 80-90% of why people are dipping into their retirement funds, whereas if you had an emergency fund before, maybe you wouldn't have had to dip into that retirement fund. So how to avoid these challenges like job loss, debt, medical expenses. You basically, like we talked about before, you have an emergency fund, and then that's a quick fix for a potential long-term issue. Obviously, if you lose your job, that's a long-term issue. But if you have that retirement fund right away, or not the retirement fund, the emergency fund right away, you can immediately use that to get back onto your feet. And then obviously, long-term solution is budget cuts, and you return to that need versus wants idea, where you're only purchasing things that are needs and not buying things that are wants. So that way, you don't have to dip into things like your retirement fund. And so this can allow a family to continue to put money into their retirement fund despite not being in the best financial situation. So, to conclude, financial stress is an issue most people deal with at some point. Most people have financial issues or financial stress at some point, and it's just one more obstacle that you have to overcome on the path to retirement. And there are ways to manage through it, such as emergency funds and budget cuts. And financial stress can be a huge problem in retirement, which is why it's important to plan and save for retirement almost from the very moment you get your first job. Most people don't think that they need to plan for retirement as soon as they get their first paycheck, but it's good to start. As soon as you have your first job, start planning for retirement and start putting that money away, because it's all going to add up. And when you're in retirement, you're not going to know how much money you're not going to know how much money you're going to need. And this will create financial freedom, success, and comfort despite no longer having a main source of income, and that will create a comfortable retirement, which is a goal I'm sure everybody looks forward to. And yeah, that is it.